2, 3.
Two. No, it's not. Anything there, guys, in the soundboard? 1, 2. Yeah? 1, 2, 3, that works? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Everybody have sound out of the soundboard? Very good.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning. This protest, or this panel, it's from protest to policy. We wanted to bring quite a few familiar faces that you all have seen all over. Many of our panelists have our families who endured the pain and tragedy of losing a loved one due to police violence. And they will all give introductions. But our moderator for this morning is Mr. DeRay McKinson, an activist, organizer, educator. We can start with you all for introductions at the end.
Folks, you have to talk. You have to grab the mic and talk into the microphone. Just take it out if you have trouble.
Good morning, Katie Jones and Clinton Jones, Corey Jones Foundations. We are Corey's parents. Corey, we're from Pompano Beach, Florida. Our son was killed in Palm Beach County while waiting for a tow on the side of the road.
Sabrina Fulton with the Trayvon Martin Foundation. I bring you greetings from Florida. I'm here to stand in support of George Floyd's family.
Good morning. My name is Gwen Carr. I'm the mother of Eric Garner from New York City. I'm here to stand in solidarity with the George Floyd family as well as all other families who haven't gotten justice as of yet. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Wanda Johnson. I'm the mother of Oscar Grant, who was killed January 1st, 2009 at the Fruitvale BART station. The movie Fruitvale Station was depicted of his life for 24 hours. I stand in solidarity with the George Floyd family and those who have lost their loved ones senselessly by way of the hands of police and community violence.
Good morning. My name is Elisa Findley. I am the sister of Botham Jean, who was killed on September 6, 2018 in Dallas, Texas by Officer Amber Geiger. I'm here to stand in solidarity with the Floyd family on their one-year anniversary of the murder of George Floyd. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Casey Fox, founder and chief of staff for Sisters of the Movement, which is a coalition of sisters who have lost their siblings to police violence. I'm here to represent all 16 of those sisters and stand in solidarity with the family of George Floyd and the other families who have lost loved ones to police terror.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Katie Wright. I am the mother of Daunte Wright, who was taken from us by Brooklyn Center Police Department on 4/11 of this year. I am here to stand in solidarity with the George family and with the George Floyd family and everybody else who has lost their lives to police violence.
My name is Maisha T. Hill. I'm the founder of Check Your Privilege, where we educate white folks on how to heal their relationships with the systems of domination and mobilizing communities, as well as Brown Speaks, where we give therapy stipends to Black and brown men, women, and children to have access to healing. I'm here in solidarity with George Floyd Foundation and all the families who are victims of police and brutality.
Good morning, everybody. I'm DeRay McKesson, one of the co-founders of Campaign Zero, and somebody who was activated around the killing of Michael Brown in 2014. In some ways, this is a homecoming because I used to live in Minneapolis when the protests began, and back here. We're going to have a conversation, a thoughtful conversation about solutions and what next steps looks like. I'll ask the panelists that we can actually just pick up the mics, I think, as we go on this conversation. But I'll start by a little bit of framing, is that remember that the police killed more people in 2020 than every single year of data we have, except for 2018, which is sort of wild. The problem is just being constant over time. When we think about the numbers at the end of last month, there were only 6 days where the police have not killed somebody in 2021, and over 400 killings have happened so far in 2021. So I say that as just a reminder that the work continues, and I am too interested in learning what the lessons are from so many people impacted. Now let's zoom out first, and I'll start, I'm gonna start with Casey and Maisha to through what have you learned over the past sort of 5 or 6 years about the landscape in activism? How has it changed? How have you seen things sort of move or not move?
Within the last 5 years, I've personally seen the increase of online activists who have profited off of the death of families. I've seen online activists not show up for families. I've seen, and I've even held myself accountable for not showing up for families. I've seen an increase in police violence. It's just being filmed more and more and more. And I've also seen us not address, like in the activist space, the need for healing for families, the need for healing for all of us who experience the post-secondary trauma of watching the violence that we're exposed to. And what has changed is the radical movement. Like, people are starting to recognize and realize that it's not a moment, it's a movement. And when we come together and we get off the online space, and when we support the families and we support one another and we go out to city hall meetings and we use our voices for change to change policies. I have seen some policies change. For example, in San Francisco, Mayor London Breed has begun a process of, I wouldn't say defunding the police, but changing around the city's budget to what the police can do, like not being first responders to mental health crises in our communities. So that's just some of what I've been seeing in the last 5 years. We have more work to do, but yeah.
Thank you. In the last 5 years, I'll echo that. There's been a huge gross lack of authenticity amongst the movement, and that is something we're very vocal about and play no games about. I want to be abundantly clear that this fight is the fight of the families, and as community leaders and organizers, it is our job to follow and allow them to lead, and for us to support with authenticity. Very serious about that. Something else that I've seen, I've seen a lot of bone throwing from lawmakers. For example, in Dallas, in Texas, there was an act passed called the Crown Act, which basically tells me that I can wear my hair natural as a Black woman. But that means nothing if I'm dead. And so that there has been a lot of bone throwing and lack of authenticity on that side too. Also in the last 5 years, something that I've seen is that we are tending to not be on one accord strategically, in that we are focusing more on treating the symptom as opposed to treating the disease. And the symptom would be the racist police officers and the police associations that are operating as organized gangs. And the disease would be the racist discriminatory laws by way of the United States Constitution. So we need to really direct and redirect and focus on the disease, which is the laws, the lawmakers, and drill down into some of that. And then that way we will be able to minimize, hopefully minimize, once we are able to hold them accountable at a federal level, we'll be able to minimize some of the racist police officers that are killing us for fun.
So I'd echo that and say, you know, there had been in the past year 17 states that have passed laws restricting the use of force across the country, which is a good thing. There have been 5 states that have restricted no-knock raids in the United States, and that is unprecedented, but there is so much more work to do. Ms. Sabrina and Ms. Gwen, can you help us? You've been in so many rooms with legislators since 2014, 2013, 2015. You've seen people tell you all types of things about what change is going to happen. Some people have followed through on those commitments, some people have not. How would you describe the role of legislators, following up the last comment that we really do need people to step up and really change the laws, to hold police accountable, to move money away from policing and invest it in alternatives? How would you describe sort of the role and responsibility of legislators, given that you've been in so many conversations with them over the years?
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Yes, I have been have talked to many politicians, and I have heard many games played by politicians. But you know what? I don't believe in writing letters. I don't believe in phone calls. I do like to get right up in their face. So when I get there, I tell them what my demands are, not my asks, but my demands are, you know. So this is why that I have gotten as far as I've gotten. I've been lied to a lot. People talk out both sides of their face when you're in front of them, but I demand them, I asked them point blank, would you co-chair with me on a certain bill? And some of them, they'll say, yeah, I'll do this. And then when it comes to them voting among themselves, I see that some of them who told me yes voted no. So now when I find out what the names are, I go do roll call. So I says, well, I see that you didn't stand with me on this bill. Could you tell me why? And while I'm in their face, they say, oh, I don't know. Okay, I'll change my vote. But you got to stare them straight in the eye, because otherwise they'll give you the runaround. They'll tell you things you want to hear when you're up in their face. But see, that's why when they give me their card, I says, is this your personal cell number? I don't want to talk to anyone else but you when I call. And so I force them to give me their cell number so I can call them. Because, see, they can call me when they get ready, so why can't I call you? So this is how, in New York, we first got the executive order for the special prosecutor with Andrew Cuomo. Because we kept asking to speak with him. The New York mothers, we kept asking to speak with him. He wouldn't have a sit down with us. So what we did, we went up to Albany with the makeshift coffins of our children and sat them in front of his door and said, what are you going to do about these bodies? And you won't talk to us. Immediately, we got to sit down with him. So sometimes we have to step out the box. We don't know what's going to happen. We didn't know when we did that whether they was going to try to arrest us or what. But I'm not new to being arrested, as you all know. So this was one of the things I did. And even by getting the Eric Garner anti-chokehold bill passed, I fought for 6 years for that. 6 years before I got it passed. And in the middle of the night, I kid you not, it was about 2 o'clock in the morning, I got a call from the speaker saying, could you be down at City Hall tomorrow because we're going to pass the Eric Garner anti-chokehold bill. I said, I'll be there. So, different things. I was on the 50A, which is for transparency and accountability for the police officers in New York. But it wasn't easy. We, the mothers and myself and the families in New York, we fought hard to get this. So sometimes I fight behind the scene as well as in front of the scene. When the cameras go out, I don't stop fighting. I keep fighting. Thanks.
Well, she pretty much said everything that I needed to say. But I want to say all too often we know that our politicians put profit over people. They don't understand the passion that we have, and you don't have to actually lose a child in order for you to have that passion. Let me just say that publicly. That's right. We need allies. We need people to support us and lift us up when we falling down. And when you all falling down, we need to lift y'all up. But I want to just say that you all know that it's two faces. People have two faces. The face they show you and the face when they behind closed doors. And so a lot of times we don't get things passed because people say one thing and they do something else. Right now, we currently are fighting a situation in Miami about Formula One racing. I know that's not what we're here for, but it's about, again, putting profit over people. You have politicians that do that, and you need to pay attention to who those people are so you don't continue to vote them back in. Pay close attention to the way they're voting and what they're voting for, because everybody that say that they support you don't really support you. You know, and we know that. We know that as families. And I want to thank the young lady with Sister for saying that, you know, the leaders need to stand behind the families and not the families stand behind the leaders, because, you know, that's definitely a plus. One of the things I want to say before I pass the mic is that a lot of these laws that's on the books are laws that need to be in compliance. They need to be enforced. And that's one of the issues with these laws. There's too many gray areas where this police officer is using the same law, like stand your ground for this reason, and another officer is using it for another reason. But I don't see, and we don't understand the reason why a person should be arrested is dead. We don't understand that. We can't get it. We can't understand why somebody is being shot in their back. I mean, how in the world could you be a threat if you being shot in your back? You running away. You afraid. You know, and it's common sense. This is not something somebody had to tell us. We saw it. We believe it. And don't believe everything you hear people say. Look for yourself and do a little research, and you'll see what's going on. But I want y'all to be encouraged. Amen.
I will say, just to provide context, remember there are 20 states that have police officer Bill of Rights, state-level laws that protect the police. There were 21 until Maryland just repealed theirs. It was the first state to ever have a police Bill of Rights, and they just repealed it this past session, which is great. And then the bill that Ms. Carr spoke about, the chokehold bill, was really, people often would say that the NYPD banned chokeholds in 1993, and that is true. The ban that people don't understand is that there are two types of neck restraints. A chokehold is your airway. It's like your Adam's apple. A stranglehold or karate restraint is the muscles around your neck. And what a lot of people do is ban one thing and not the other. They would ban one thing and not the other. So police would kill people, and they'd be like, well, I didn't do this, that thing. It is that slippery slope that allows the police to get off. And, you know, people often say that the police are above the law, and we say that's not true. The police actually just have their own sets of laws and policies, which is a part of the problem. Now, I'll go to Mr. Clinton and Ms. Katie. When we look at the murder of your son, there was a conviction in that case. How do you think about accountability? For a lot of people, they would say a conviction is either what they want, or some people would say that we want more than a conviction in these cases. How have you thought about what accountability and justice looks like, given that there was a conviction in this case?
Good evening, everyone. I count it a privilege and an honor to be here and to represent and support George Floyd family. I thank God that He has given us this platform to say something about what all is going on in the Black community. And I'm happy that we got a conviction. And because of that, it had put us in this situation. And I would like to encourage everyone to, as blacks, to watch your surroundings. In these days, we need technology. We need a cell phone, not just one cell phone. Maybe we need 4 or 5 as being black. But because of the cell phone that my son had, and he had it on, and it was recording everything that was going on, and because of that, we was able to get justice for Corey. And I would like to encourage everyone to keep your head up, be encouraged. Justice will come. It may take a year, it may take 2 years, it may take 3 years. But we can't give up the fight. We have to keep fighting. And I thank God for all of the support that you have given our family. It's hard. It done been over 5 years. In October will be 6 years that our son Corey has left us. No fault of his own, because of a racist police took my son's life. But we have to be encouraged that we will get justice.
I know you asked, was the conviction enough? No, it is a start, but it didn't stop the modern day lynching. We're not at the end of that noose, but we're at the end of that gun barrel. And so it goes on and it continues on. And we have to mobilize and organize and take ourselves to the streets, to the courthouses, as high as we can go. Yes. We have to unify on this across the board. Families have to unify. You have to be transparent, not just with your love for your family member that has fallen, but the love for each other is what would transcend. That's your legacy, to keep the movement strong, to keep it going. We must keep that going. Be transparent. This is not a competition about your love for your family member. It is all about them. If you can keep that focus, you can channel your energy behind each other. There is so much I can see that's happening in the city of Minneapolis. I thank God for these wonderful women and men on the stage with us today. There's a lot of stuff going on. They got a lot of stuff moving, but just think of that move. If the little pot fires here and there could just get behind this one fire and keep it lit. Keep the fires burning so you can keep their dream and legacy alive.
Elisa, simple question around this mic. Pass her that mic. Similar question around accountability. There was how do you accountability and justice look like? And you know, convictions are rare. The police kill about 1,100 people a year. The highest number of convictions ever in a given year is 11. So, you know, any conviction that happens actually anomaly in the overall data set. But Elisa, how have you thought about accountability, or what comes next, or what is the work ahead?
I agree with the Jones family. We did get a conviction for Amber Geiger. It was the first murder conviction of a female officer, white female officer, in some time. I don't look at a conviction as justice. The conviction is accountability, is what should happen. The fact that we celebrate the few convictions, to me, is sad. A conviction should be mandatory if you commit murder.
Correct.
I think there is still a lot of work left to be done. We still need to apply the pressure. We got a conviction of Derek Chauvin. We're still waiting on the sentencing, because for Amber Geiger, she only got 10 years for killing my brother. But we still need to apply the pressure. Daunte Wright was just killed. We need to apply pressure for that. We're seeing the videos now for Ronald Green. We need to apply pressure for that. There is still so much work left to be done, and it's sad that we cannot stop and celebrate what should be mandatory. So I think we need to, like Ms. Jones said, we need to band together and keep that fire going. We cannot stop, we cannot rest, we cannot think that, it's over, because there's so much left to be done.
We'll get the mics fixed in a second. Ms. Wanda, so many of us saw Fruitvale Station, and really it helped us it helped a lot of people enter into a conversation that they weren't necessarily equipped to before. How do you think about the role of the media or the role of film and TV as being a useful partner in this moment? Or maybe you don't think it is a useful partner. Like, how do you think about the role of the media in terms of helping to tell our stories?
Thank you for that question. The role of the media regarding telling our stories. One of the things that we have to look at when our children are killed by the police, the first thing that is done by media oftentimes is the demonization of our children. Our children do not become the ones that's killed, but in a sense, our society puts them up as if it was justified that they were killed. And so when I think about the media, I always tell people to don't take it at face value, to go and research it for yourself. And when you research it for yourself, don't just research the incident that occurred, but you also have to research the history of policing. Because when you look at the media and you look at all of the lives that's being taken at the hands of police, many times it's spent that African American and brown young men are like animals. They're angry, they're violent, they're perpetrators, and there's a whole list of characteristics that have been assigned to our people. And so because they have been assigned, when the media begins to talk about it, some of those very assigned characteristics that they have been given, the media begins to filter that into the atmosphere. One, you will hear that oftentimes when our people are killed, many times come from the media, that they've been fed by the policing system, that that person was reaching for a gun at his waistline, that person was trying to resist arrest, that person was trying to fight the police. And so when we think about the media, our people have to begin to start our own media companies and begin to tell our own stories, okay? We have to begin to, like my brother just said, control that narrative, because oftentimes the narrative that we are told is in fact not what happened. And so had we not seen what happened to George Floyd, had we not seen what happened to my son Oscar, it would have just been, oh, they resisted arrest and it's just another black man being killed at the hands of police because he deserved it, is what would have been said. And so because there was media, or not media, but because there was cameras, it could not be refuted that Oscar was not resisting arrest. You know, it was there. He was laying on the platform. It could not be refuted that George Floyd was not resisting arrest. He was not resisting arrest. He was there, and someone had his knee on his neck, sort of the same way that that officer first had his knee on Oscar's neck. And so when we look at that, instead of having media tell us what happened, we got to begin to tell media what happened. And so as I close, I just, again, want to make sure that we look at the history of policing and understand that the police are doing exactly what they've been trained and hired to do. It's no difference than when the police had us when we were in chains and a slave would run away, and then that policing system would chase them, whip them, bring them back, and then even sometimes hang them and kill them. And so it hasn't changed. And so what media has to do is begin to tell the other side our story versus what they're hearing, and coming out, sharing that, and having hundreds and thousands of people believing what they heard when it's, in fact, it is not true. Thank you.
You know, it is so interesting. Most of the narratives that we know in the media are either stretches or just straight out false. You know, this past year was the first year that black people are more afraid of being killed by a police officer than being victims of community violence. We had not anticipated that that would be the case, which is sort of wild. And you hear people say that policing is really hard, it's really dangerous. The #1 killer of the police last year was COVID, it was not community. And every year before that is actually death by suicide, it is not community members. So we always sort of push people to think deeper about how they think about what the problems are. Now, I wanted to, before we do a lightning round at the end, Ms. Aubrey, I wanted to ask you, how can people show up for you? What is, you know, we've heard people say that we should support the families, that organizers should stand with families. What does that look like? Like, what is your advice to people who hear this panel, they hear you, they want to support, and they're like, well, what does support look like? How do we show up?
One thing is just listening to the families. I think a lot of times people have their own agendas and they want to get their voices out, whether it's for clout or it's for their own purpose. Not once have I had somebody come up to me and say, hey, Mrs. Wright, what do you want from us? Secondly, it's being there when we need them at our hardest times, when the cameras aren't there. When we're sitting at home crying and mourning our child after we're, you know, all alone, when it only seems like people are around us and want to support us when there's a camera in our face. Another thing is just making sure that they're true and genuine, and making sure that the reasoning that they're standing beside us is because they want justice for my son, or they want justice to not have any more Dauntes. And on the political side, I mean, standing at our funeral, now what? If they would have passed bills before this, my son would be here right now. My son would be here. George Floyd would still be here. And now they're just slowly pushing and not passing things that they need to pass. And my heart breaks because, unfortunately, with all the baby steps that they're taking, who's to say there's not going to be another Daunte? Police reform is a big thing that needs to happen, and I think that when people are out there talking about it, they need to talk about that. They need to talk about holding police accountable. They need to talk about making sure that, you know, the families have the support in that, and that's kind of it.
Well, let's do a lightning round. We'll ask everybody, what do you think comes next? And what advice do you have for people who are continuing the fight and want to stand in partnership? So what comes next, or what have you learned? So you can choose in this lightning round. Sort of closing thoughts as we think about the path forward. You know, the numbers are sort of staying steady. We have a lot more work to do. You know, it's interesting, when we think about Brooklyn Center, the police actually kill more people in suburban communities than almost all other communities combined. It's not cities. People think it's cities, but cities is actually the only place in the country where it's getting better over time. Mindful that Brooklyn Center is not a city. We think about Ferguson as the county, In Maryland, Baltimore County Police killed more people last year than every jurisdiction in the state of Maryland. It wasn't Baltimore City. So the way we talk about where the problem happens is also different. But we'll start over here. So advice you have to people, sort of, or what you think comes next, or learnings.
I think if you're a person like myself who has a platform, I think it's time. My advice would be to step back and get behind these families and use your platforms to allow their voices to be heard, to tell their stories, to ask what they need, to let them show up and speak the narrative and not me, myself, speak the narrative for Daunte's story, because I don't know Daunte's story 100%. Another thing I would love to see is a focus on how we, again, I come from a healing space, a healing background. How do we heal from this, right? What does it look like to have peer support groups for families, peer support groups for the community? Because every time we look at these videos on Facebook, like, we are exposing ourselves to a level of trauma that we continue to keep seeing, that we need to continue to work through and work on and support each other in this work. And I'd also love to, where do we go from here? Holding the police accountable, defunding the police, taking some of that police budget and putting it into our communities and giving our communities the power to work in partnership and or let the police know what we need, because we know what we need. They keep creating the stories, they keep writing the narratives, and I think it's time for the power to go back to the people and the people to tell the community and to tell the police what we need.
I think people need to stand up before this happens to them. I think a lot of people want to talk and be in it when it happens. If it hasn't happened to you yet, your voices need to be heard. You need to be there front and center, because the pain that I feel, that many of the families feel, we don't want that to happen to anybody else. And in order to stop that, everybody has to say something. Everybody has to be active, not just because you're in this life. This is not a life that I chose to be in. The police brought me into this life. So in order to change that, everybody has to say something and stand up.
Exactly what Katie just said. We need to be on the opposite side of the hashtag. And so we're pushing for federal legislation for preventative measures. If other organizations, I served some time in the military, we didn't have these types of issues. We're still carrying guns because it's the mindset, it's the discriminatory mindset. Just as we're weeding and seeding out the racist cops, we got to weed and seed out the racist politicians. And so those two things go hand in hand. They're synonymous of each other. And it's time out for them using us for tokens and political ploys. And so that is the piece that we are focusing on. And if I had to give everyone one call to action, they counted on us not learning how to read and write for 400 years. We need to be reading and writing. That was one of the things that they didn't want us to do, because there's power in that. Stop blindly voting for somebody. Stop blindly just checking a box that was checked the year before and the year before because your grandmama and her mama told you to check that box and do that. Read for yourself. Understand who these people are that you are putting in positions of power to make decisions on whether or not you live or die.
I think what needs to happen now is, like the other two ladies said, we need to keep applying the pressure. We need to stop showing up only when someone is dead. We need to show up before someone is dead. So right now, everyone is on a high from the Derek Chauvin verdict, but we still need to keep that same energy and start applying pressure to our politicians, to our federal government, so that we could have policies in place to prevent this from happening. Because I wouldn't wish this feeling on anyone. I wouldn't wish PTSD on anyone, anxiety on anyone, depression on anyone, because this is what I go through on a daily basis since Amber Geiger walked into my brother's apartment and killed him because he was black. We need to stop that. And we need, like I said, apply the pressure. Don't take your foot off the gas just because we got a conviction.
And I just want to echo what my sister said. There's a quick story I want to tell real quick. There was a young man named Nehemiah who was on the wall, and there was opposition coming against him, and he would not come down from the wall no matter what happened. And so as families who have lost loved ones, we have put a conscious thing in our heart to not come off the wall, to stay on the wall, ensuring that our voices are heard of the injustices that are taking place in our community and in our society. And so we're asking the community of audience in this place to make a commitment to get on the wall with us and to stay on the wall with us, no matter what it looks like, no matter what it feels like, no matter even if it seems like, oh, we're getting victory because somebody got convicted. No, we still have to fight and stay on the wall no matter what it feels like, because until the laws are changed, until more police are being convicted, we will not see any change take place until we continue to band together and stand up and say, we're not going to take it anymore, no matter what it looks like, feels like, or what I think or what I see, because we know that victory is only when we come together in unity and work to change the status of this community.
Good afternoon. You see, we got power on this stage. All right. Yes, I just want to say I would like for the media to stop only running to as quote unquote high profile cases. See, as they see us up here on this stage, we are only the face of what has happened around the United States and other countries. You know, they'll say, I had a fellow from the media ask me one time, I was in Philadelphia at a case which wasn't, they call high profile. And he asked me, he says, Ms. Carr, I see that you go to all the protesters and the press conferences of high profile cases. But just so happened that day, I had on a shirt that had like 200 names on it. I said, do you know any of these names that are on my shirt? I said, some of them you know and some of them you don't. These are people that I have come in contact with through my journey. And it's not only the ones that you so-called high profile, because to me, all cases are high profile. So I go wherever I am needed. That's why I go all over the country. Sometimes you see me and sometimes you don't. But yes, they're not there at the ones that they don't consider high profile. But I consider you, all my sisters and brothers who have fallen children and fallen family members, you are all high profile to me. And I want the country to start treating all these cases as high profile and not just another news story, because we all matter, and say all their names.
I just want to say real quick that even though you see us up here, we represent so many other families, like Ms. Gwen just said. You know, we can't even fit on this stage. It's so many families and so many families that we are connected to. You know, continue to support them. Don't just support them when it just happened. Continue to support them. Continue to lift them up. And some things that community activists can do, they can, number one, continue. Don't stop. Don't stop. It's hard. It's rough. But don't stop. A lot of people talk way too much for me. They talk a lot. But guess what? The action is what's important. If you're going to be a community activist, then you need to act. We need some action. You know, just talking the talk and being a good speaker is one thing. And posting on your social media, that's one thing. But the real work is in your actions and what you do. Not necessarily what you say. Continue to be the light. Continue to shine your light. Continue to stand tall. We are people of never giving up. We are never giving up, because I grew up with a grandmother and great-grandmother and a mother, and they never gave up, and neither will I.
I like to say something concerning that too. Is this probably be like a little off with what I want to say. Amen. This is on my heart. I would like to say that we need to continue to support one another, and it's been 5 years, and I'm still dealing with that. And all of y'all up here, that we have something in common, and all of us has been through the same thing, and I see all of y'all as therapies. When I say that, I would like to, when I need help, I need to talk to somebody. Somebody that's been through with what I'm going through with, I need to talk to you. I don't need to go to a therapy and sit down in a chair and you try to, you know, help me work on my situation. I need somebody that done been through what I went through with. I can call you sometime and say, brother, I need some help. Sister, I'm going through something. I need something. I need you to talk to me, you know, to help me through this situation. And with what makes me angry, someone said that so many people are making money off my son's death. And no one called me and said that they want to donate to the foundation. And you don't really understand, you know, what caused us to be here today, and who, you know, paid for this for us to be here. It takes money for us to be here. And I need the support from those that say that they love us, say that they want to help us. But we need that support, and we need y'all to stop stealing from our families. That's what's on my heart. Amen.
Amen, preacher. Amen. We need to come together and cancel the devil's assignment on our people's lives. We need to do that. A lot has been said already. I'm not going to overshadow any of that. But we do need to form that bond of unity. We just can't say it enough. The bar has been raised. One thing that I have observed, history reveals this. We are marching and we are protesting. We're doing things, and still a lot of things has not been changed. But what they have not changed, and that means that the mobilization, the organization, but some strategizing has to be done, because they come to us the same time, the same way, every single time. They were ready for us over 60 or 200 years ago. So we got to bring our minds together so that we can do things different, so we can't just be crazy. We can't be crazy. They have so much money that has mobilized and got behind. They just call them eccentric. But they call us crazy. But I say today, we canceling the devil's assignment on our people's lives. There will be victory. There will be victory. Thank you again to the George Floyd family for inviting us here. We stand with you in solidarity. It's so hard to see you we had audio tape, but we could not imagine the shoes that you were standing in to see your father, brother, uncle, cousin, nephew just over and over to die so many times. That ain't right. That ain't right. Again, our prayers continue to support us and not just let us be a face, but let us be a movement that's complete, and to complete it until it's finished.
So thank you all for being here. We'll have Ben Crump lead us out of here, but this was an important panel. Thank all the panelists for being here today. We'll do one round of applause. Thank you for being here. And what we say in organizing is this reminder that one is the biggest number. Sometimes people are like, you know, we need something that changes 1,000 to one is the biggest number when it's your sister, your brother, your cousin. One is a big number. So change happens sometimes big and small, but all of it matters in the grand scheme. So I'll give it to Ben Crump to close us out. Again, thank you for being here. Honored to be here with the panelists, and thank you for your words.
Give a big round of applause to DeRay McKissick, our brother who's been on the front line for a long, long time. Want to acknowledge my man, Jacob Blake Sr. His son, Jacob Blake Jr. was shot and paralyzed in Kenosha, Wisconsin. He always keep it real. Want to acknowledge the family of Alvin Cole, who also is from Wisconsin. I know Elisa and I had a chance to have breakfast with them this morning. Thank you all for coming on your own dime to be here with George Floyd's family. Where's Bianca at? All right, and Bianca, the aunt of Breonna Taylor, who literally, y'all, before the lawyers got involved, she was out there every day in front of the police department saying black women lives matter. So thank you, Bianca. I love you. I understand Micaiah Bryant's family is present with us. Okay, well, let's acknowledge them as well. Please acknowledge them. You know, it's so profound. DeRay and I, as I look at Ryan Julison, who helped us tremendously with Trayvon Martin, Sabrina, DeRay and I was literally just having a moment since Trayvon and since Michael Brown. How many more families have been added to this fraternity that seems to be one of the quickest growing fraternities in the black community? I mean, it's just heartbreaking. And I always acknowledge Trayvon Martin's case as being the tragedy that raised the awareness level in America. I don't think we could have got a conviction in Botham Jones' case. I mean, that was, you're talking about this Chauvin verdict, to have a white policewoman be convicted of first-degree murder. I don't know when we're ever going to see that again in America. And so I don't think without Trayvon we would have got the conviction in Botham or in Corey Jones. First time in Florida that a police officer had got convicted of killing a black person in over 40 years. And so I think all of that is we continue to lift up each other. As I said many times, I don't think we would have got the conviction of Derek Chauvin without Trayvon Martin's case raising awareness. It was the impetus for Black Lives Matter, and then what DeRay and the activists were doing, and Ferguson doing, Michael Brown. It just keeps raising the consciousness level to say that we won't let you sweep us under the rug. And we have to always remember, every family matters, every case matters, every protest matters, because it helps the next person get a little more justice. because it's a journey to justice, y'all. It's a journey. And, you know, on a journey, you can take 2 steps forward, and then you might have a step back. But always you keep going forward on that journey to justice. And that's what it is. I thought the Chauvin trial was certainly very landmark. It was significant on the journey to getting equal justice under the law for all our people, not just some of our people, but all our people. And that's so important that we remember that it's always about all of us. When we say this word with liberty and justice for all, well, we got to make America live up to that. It can't just be rhetoric. It got to be true. It got to become reality for black people and brown people and native people. It can't be just liberty and justice for white people. It really has to be all of us if we're going to live up to the high ideals of this country. I have to acknowledge Adna Marcelin and Jakari and Uzoma. Y'all raise your hand. Uzi, raise your hand. Yeah, and everybody who worked on this great day and this great event and yesterday. Without them, it's always a team effort. I have to acknowledge Attorney Queen, salute. Antoinette, thank you. I have to acknowledge Attorney Tony Romanucci. It's always a team effort. He and Chris Stewart was our co-counsels working on behalf of George Floyd's family. I don't know if Attorney Jeff Storms is with you. All right, Jeff Storms. It's always a team effort, y'all. Nobody does this alone. Najee, it's good to see you from Los Angeles. So many people play an intricate part of us getting some measure of accountability. I've heard Ms. Carr say many times, a lot of people say, now justice would be my child coming back home. So all we can get is accountability. And so we fight for accountability to try to have them stop killing us. And in conclusion, I would say I literally, Bridget, you know, man, the death and dying experience for black people in America, it's just different. It's just different. I don't think our white brothers and sisters can even fathom our reality because it's so foreign to them. And I think that's what was so important about George Floyd, because when we watched George Floyd being tortured to death for 9 minutes and 29 seconds, and our white brothers and sisters saw it, Stephanie, it was like, they was like, oh, this is real. They couldn't fathom it. You know, after the first minute, you have second minute, knee still on the neck, the third minute, the fourth minute, the fifth minute, the sixth minute, the seventh minute, the eighth minute, the ninth minute, DeRay. I think they couldn't imagine that happening to a human being. But for every black person I talk to in America, they understand, Sabrina, but by the grace of God, that could be me. Yes. I mean, that is our reality. Every day we wake up in America, we know that there are many cases far worse than George Floyd that nobody just wouldn't believe us. Right. You know, and so when you think about that, that's why we have to continue to think about our experience. I know Bridget, her brother died at the anniversary was yesterday. Apparently she lost her mother's birthday. Her mother died the day before her brother died. And so you just deal with a lot of it. And so she is going through a different kind of grief at the moment, but she wanted to thank you all. George Floyd family who's present with us, would you all raise your hands and be recognized? Any Floyd family present, Adna? Okay. All right, well, we want to thank some cousins who are here. the last thing I would say in conclusion is we are dealing with this George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. We were just talking with some of the senators and their offices there, the continuing negotiations, Katie, Alyssa, as we discussed. They're going on a 3-week vacation starting next week. We can't lose this moment, yeah. We can't lose this momentum. It has been 57 years, D. Ray, since we had meaningful police reform in America. And we got to watch everything, Al, to make sure it's meaningful because, Katie, everybody up here, your blood is on that bill, this legislation, literally. And so we don't want to have something just to say they signed the bill and George Floyd. No, it got to be meaningful. It got to include Breonna no-knock warrant legislation. It got to include the chokehold legislation. It got to include the Andre Hill body cam and Corey Jones body cam video from different parts of the state. It got to have all these components in it to make it meaningful. And so it is an opportunity for us. It's a moment. And I would tell you, if we don't stay on them, it will pass. 57 years, every year in the United States Congress, police reform comes up. It comes up and nothing happens. And they move on. Right now, we have people who are elected in the House, the Senate, and the executive branch. Don't know when we're going to have that again, y'all. So we got to write letters, we got to talk, we got to do everything we can so we don't lose this moment. Amen. We cannot lose this moment, and we got to educate ourselves. Tony, we always talk about you have to engage the community, you have to educate the community, and you have to empower the community. The reason that's so important, y'all do understand when qualified immunity came to America and became the law of the land, it was held as a victory in Garner v. Tennessee. It was held as a victory because that case went up to the United States Supreme Court, and it was talking about it's illegal to shoot a person in the back running away. And of course it was a black person. They shot in the back because they don't shoot white men in the back. But Garner v. Tennessee was about a black man running away. They shot him in the back. It went up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said it is illegal to shoot a person in the back if they're not posing a threat of harm or violence to you. And they said it was a big victory. But also in that Supreme Court ruling, they said except if the police feels that he is in fear or his life is threatened. And so what happened? Every police officer, every time they shot one of us, they said 3 little words. I was in fear, you know? And once they said that, the Supreme Court said, hey, you can't Monday morning quarterback the police. You weren't in his shoes. You weren't there. And no matter how much objective evidence we had, they dismissed the cases based on qualified immunity. So we have to educate ourselves, right, Tony, right, Jeff? We have to educate ourselves on this stuff. And so I believe because of your
So we can all go downstairs and load the bus. If we can all begin to head down to the bus so we can go to the lunch, that'll be great.